What's up, everybody? CT here, and welcome back to my 2014 SEC football preview. And it's time to talk about the Auburn Tigers. And what a just a phenomenal year it was for Auburn last year, coming off of a 0-8 season in the SEC, 3-9 overall, and they go from that to winning the SEC and making it to the national championship game and just coming, what was it, 13 seconds away from being national champions. And they should have won that game. They really should have. But anyway, Gus Malzahn going into his second year and just such a different feel going into this year as last year. I think people thought, 7 wins, 7 or 8 wins would have been a successful year last year. And, this year the expectations are high, and they should be. And, there's going to be a target on Auburn's back this year. But, yeah, best turnaround in college football history last year. I don't think there's any question about it. Maybe you can pull up you know, something happened, 60 years ago or something that, but no, no one cares about anything that happened that long ago. It was a different game back then. I don't even know if there's anything that comes close to this. I really don't think there is. But man, this those two plays. When I think of the 2013 Auburn season, two plays come to mind. That Hail Mary against Georgia, which was just unbelievable. I mean, that let me say this. That play was luck. But the kick six against Alabama, there was really no luck involved in that. I mean, if you think about it, it was really a likely scenario. I mean, we'll probably never see it again, but think about it. Alabama's kicking a long field goal, so the chances of the kick coming up short are pretty high. And if the kick was going to come up short, Chris Davis was going to return it. And Chris Davis was going to return it. It's just a mismatch at that point. It's all skill players on the field for Auburn against all linemen for Alabama, and a kicker and a holder. So really, it was just a mismatch and on the field at that particular time. It really, but yeah, Georgia was just a miracle. It really was. If you ran that play 100 times, that wouldn't happen again. But anyways, on to this year. Auburn's returning 8 players on offense, 6 on defense. They're returning a lot of key players, and I really like the way this team looks right now. I really like it. But they did lose some big time players, which I'm going to get into right now. They lose Trey Mason, who they hand the ball to this dude about 100 times a game, and he still had enough as much. He was still running as hard the last carry as he did the first one. Trey Mason really came into his own about midway through the year. They were doing more of a running back by committee thing at the beginning of the year with him and Cameron Artis-Payne and Corey Grant, but Trey Mason solidified himself as the guy. I'd say right around that Ole Miss Texas A&M game is really when Trey Mason started to be a beast, and he's a phenomenal player. So you would think losing him would really hurt, and it might hurt. But I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off because they have some phenomenal backs, which I'll get to in a second. They lose D Ford, who was just a quality pass rusher, but they have depth on that defensive line, so they may not have anyone as good as D Ford right now, but they might by the end of the year because they have guys who can rush the passer, and they got guys who can stop the run up the middle. They lose Greg Robinson. I really don't think they're going to have anyone who can really replace Greg Robinson. I mean, he's a second overall pick in the draft. I mean, he was just a freak. The dude is just an absolute bulldozer. But they got offensive linemen. He's the only one off that offensive line who I think is the best offensive line in the country last year. Definitely when it comes to running the football, and he's the only one they lost. So, uh, I feel good about the guy who they have replacing him. Can't think of his name right now, but yeah, I feel pretty good about him. I watched him play in the spring game. Uh, Out of the secondary, they lose Chris Davis and Ryan Smith. Uh, Chris Davis was more of just a return man. He was a phenomenal return man. I mean, he could take it back for a touchdown just about any given play. Uh, but he wasn't the best in coverage. Didn't have an interception his entire career. He finally got one in the Senior Bowl, but that doesn't count. Uh, that really, if you think about that, I think he was a 3-year starter. Uh, you don't get a single interception your entire career. It's hard to say that you were really that great of a corner. If you didn't get a single interception. I mean, it's really not that hard to get an interception. He was just never in the right place at the right time, I guess, when it comes to being in coverage. Ryan Smith, uh, nothing phenomenal. He was okay at stopping the run, but he got beat over the top in coverage all the time. A lot of times he was not where he was supposed to be. Uh, Busted coverages, miscommunications with him. And real quick, back to Chris Davis. I think he's like 5'10", so he's a really short corner. And there's some big receivers in the SEC, and that really hurt Auburn in the Missouri game and the Florida State game when he was matched up on Odell Beckham, or not Odell Beckham, Dorial Green Beckham and Kelvin Benjamin. So yeah, if they can get bigger at that spot, then that would be a big benefit to them. But Ryan Smith, this dude, he was just a trash talker, and I like that about him, and also don't like it. It's kind of one of those things where like you want to hear what he's saying. Uh, if he's not just being classless, then that's one thing. But you like a guy who at least he cares. He's trying to get the team fired up. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I like that aspect to him and what he brought to the defense, but uh, not that great in coverage. So I don't know if they're really losing a great player. Uh, Real quick, Carl Lawson, are not losing him. He was a freshman last year, but uh, just had ACL surgery in May. So they're hoping to get him back towards the end of the year, but there's no guarantee on that. And that's a fairly significant loss because he was a second overall recruit in the country last year, and supposedly the second best defensive end behind Robert Nkemdiche. But yeah, he showed some flashes last year of brilliance. He's going to be a really good player whenever he comes back. He's just a freak. I mean, he's a big, strong, athletic kid, and really seems like one of those high character guys. So hopefully Carl Lawson gets back some point this year. It would be a huge benefit to the team if he can come back towards the end of the year, hopefully for the Georgia and Alabama games around that time when they'll really need him. Uh, Key returnees, uh, Nick Marshall, and he was one of the key difference makers last year. Uh, Really a just super fast, can just brilliant when running the read option. When he gets outside, it's big time trouble for opposing defenses, and he has really improved as a passer, and he's a better passer than teams think. There's a big difference in offense in a quarterback who can't throw and a quarterback in an offense who chooses not to throw. It's very it's very dangerous for an offense to throw when they want to, and that's where Auburn was last year and is right now. It's very dangerous when they don't need to throw because their running game is so good. It's like why throw it? But when they do throw, it catches the defense off guard and they're not ready for it, and they can do it. And they're going to do it a lot more this year because I think a lot of teams are going to try to stack the box and make Nick Marshall beat them by throwing the ball, and he's going to be able to do it too. Uh, Nick Marshall, as I'm sure a lot of you all know, got into some trouble a couple weeks ago before SEC Media Day. Got caught with some marijuana in his car, but he's probably going to miss like the first half of the Arkansas game or something silly like that. That seems to be the thing to do nowadays. Suspend the player for a half and let him play second half. It seems to be the popular decision these days. But if he can't play, they have Jeremy Johnson just back there waiting for him, who you could argue is better than Nick Marshall. I certainly think he's gonna be better than Nick Marshall in a couple of years when he gets his opportunity, or next year when he gets his opportunity. Big, 6'5", strong kid, strong arm, accurate passer, dual threat. Jeremy Johnson's a heck of a player, and he's going to be uh, probably a Heisman candidate whenever he takes over at Auburn. At the running back position, looks like Cameron Artis-Payne will be the guy who will get the first shot at being the guy. But of course, they run it running back by committee type of deal. I don't think they'll be giving a guy like 50 carries a game like they did for Trey Mason last year. Cameron Artis-Payne, he put the ball in the end zone several times last year. He's a good, solid back. He was a JUCO transfer last year. More of a power guy, so I like him in between the tackles when you have Corey Grant on the outside on the jet sweeps. Corey Grant is just lightning fast. He's kind of the Ontario McCaleb's of this team, and they also have a true freshman in Rock Thomas. Man, this guy is gonna be very good. Kind of a mixture. He has speed. He has power. Uh, I don't really know who he reminds me of, but man, this guy. Watch this. If you don't know who he is, type in Rock Thomas highlights and watch his junior and senior highlights. It's just so many big runs. He's running people over. He has his lateral movements is reminds me of Shady McCoy or a Barry Sanders type of thing. I know everyone gets compared to Barry Sanders, but man, this guy's lateral movements are unbelievable. He can juke some guys out of their shoes. This guy, he may be the guy this year. He might be. Gus Malzahns said that they've had some success with true freshman running backs, so that tells me that he's not afraid to play Rock Thomas immediately, and he knows how good Rock Thomas is. And Gus Malzahn said at the SEC Media Day that he went to play Rock Thomas when he went to watch Rock Thomas play in high school for the first time. That it was the most impressive performance he's ever seen from a high school player. So, and he's seen some good players in his time. He coached Darren McFadden and of course Trey Mason, Cam Newton. So, I'm telling you, Rock Thomas is going to be a good one. He's going to be a good one. They return their entire offensive line except for Greg Robinson, of course. And man, this offensive line was just mowing people down last year. Absolutely phenomenal. They were the true stars of the Auburn team last year, I thought. They were really the difference maker. They don't get all those yards and all those points without this offensive line, man. They make it happen. They make it happen. At the wide receiver position, they return Sammy Coates. Man, Sammy Coates, I think, is going to develop into a first round draft pick type of talent this year. Uh, what? Tell me what this guy doesn't have. I can't believe that more people aren't talking about Sammy Coates. I guess it's because Auburn didn't throw the ball much last year, so people don't really think about him. But man, this guy is like 6'4", 6'5", uh, probably 230, 240 of rock hard muscle. He's put on some weight in the off season, and it's muscle. It's muscle. This dude is absolutely shredded, and he's lightning fast. I think he runs like a 4.3 something, maybe a 4.4 flat at the worst, and he can catch the football phenomenally. He can high point the football in the air. He's a mismatch on just about any corner in the country. Uh, Man, Sammy Coates he's going to be a good one, and I think he's really going to come out of his shell this year. And he was good last year. I think he averaged he led the he led the country in yards per reception last year. And it was like every time he touched the ball was a touchdown because they just go deep to him, and it'd be catch everybody off guard because they're running the ball, 90% of the time. And Sammy Coates would burn his man just about every time. And how many times last year did we see Sammy Coates wide open and Nick Marshall miss him? So good thing Nick Marshall, I think, is going to be a lot more accurate with the football this year because Sammy Coates is going to light him up. Uh, and opposite Sammy Coates, they signed the number one JUCO player in the country in Duke Williams, who is another big, strong receiver, pretty fast too, and he can go up and get the ball, and he'd probably be the best receiver on the team, on I'd say about 85% of the teams in the country, and to have him be the number two guy, man, some serious weapons for Nick Marshall and this Auburn offense and Gus Malzahns to play with. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And of course, they return Quan Bray and Ricardo Lewis, the Miracle Man, and the Prayer and Jordan Hare. Man, Quan Bray is just a small, quick, little kind of slot receiver type guy, and he's not bad either. Ricardo Lewis is a straight speed guy, extremely fast. They hand it to him on the jet sweep occasionally. So yeah, they're pretty stacked at receiver. I think this is the best receiving core I've seen at Auburn in my lifetime. Absolutely phenomenal receivers. Uh, on defense, they return Gabe Wright and Montravius Adams. I think are going to be the two biggest interior defensive linemen. If they get Carl Lawson back, add him to the mix at defensive end. They also have Elijah Daniels, who's going to be a, a young a young emerging star on that defensive line. He can straight uh, rush the passer. They have Ladarius Owens coming back, so a lot of good players on this defensive line. Uh, Big, strong guys who can rush the passer, who can stop the run. Have a lot of depth, and I think Auburn is going to have one of the best defensive lines in the country this year, no question about it. Uh, my favorite player on this Auburn defense, though, is Robinson Thurese. He plays the star position in Ellis Johnson's defense. This guy is so underrated. He can he's pretty he get better. He could use a little work in coverage, but I think he's going to get better than that. He was a first year starter last year. He wasn't even supposed to start. Justin Garrett got hurt, and Robinson Thurese came in and played phenomenally. Probably he was the star on that defense in a lot of games last year. had several interceptions, and he lays the lumber on guys. Uh, Watch this guy's high school tape, and I've never seen uh, as many hard hits from one guy in my life. Unbelievable. This guy, and he had some really big hits last year. I remember one at Texas A&M and a couple other ones I can't think of right now. I think Mississippi State. Yeah, he laid the lumber on Ladarius Perkins. Ladarius Perkins tries to juke him and absolutely got cracked. Robinson Threes, he's going to be a phenomenal player this year. And at linebacker, they return Casanova McKenzie and Chris Frost. They lose Jake Holland, which I think is a good thing. He lacked athleticism. Was not ever a big fan of Jake Holland. Casanova McKenzie, I like him though. I think he's really going to show a lot of improvements this year. And Chris Frost isn't bad either. In the secondary, they returned Jonathan Mincy and Jermaine Whitehead, who I think will be much improved. They were young last year, uh, not really ready for, not really ready to play. I don't think they weren't bad though, but they did give up a lot of big plays. But a lot of that was Chris Davis and Ryan Smith as well. But I think they'll be much improved, and I think you'll see this. I think you'll see this entire Auburn defense improve, and I think you'll see them improve in the secondary quite a bit too. Uh, Real quick, Calvarez, Basent, and Steven Roberts, two young corners who could take the place of Chris Davis, uh, and Trevon Reed, who played receiver for Auburn last year, also made the switch to corner. And watch out for him. I'm not sure how well he's doing or if he really might start or not, but uh, who knows? But I like Calvarez Basent also got into some trouble over the off season. I think for marijuana also. Uh, so yeah, two issues with Nick Marshall and Calvarez Basent that Gus Malzahn had to deal with, and that's a little bit unusual. But you know, marijuana is not really that big of a concern. I'm not going to get in, get it's a whole different discussion. But if someone's going to get into some trouble for something, I guess marijuana would be, you know, the most preferable thing. At least they're not, they didn't rob a grocery store or sell autographed uniforms or anything like that. So they'll be all right, and I think this defense will be much improved. And let's go ahead and get into the 2014 schedule for Auburn. They open up with Arkansas on the SEC network, and yeah, definitely like Auburn in this game. Auburn jumped off to a huge lead against Arkansas last year, and Arkansas came back a little bit before Auburn pulled away, and never gave Auburn too much trouble, and I don't think they'll give them too much trouble this year either. Then they have San Jose State at home, who should be another easy win. San Jose State was a pretty solid team last year, but I think they lost a lot of key players. So, but they weren't gonna put up much of a fight against Auburn anyways. Then they have a bye week before they go to Kansas State, in which is a very tricky game, and a very tricky place to play. They have one of the best coaches in the country, in what is his name? Whatever Snyder, I think's his name, the old man. Yeah, that's a tricky game. I'm not exactly sure how good Kansas State's going to be this year, but I'm pretty sure they'll be in the preseason top 25, and they'll be looking to try to knock off Auburn. But it'll be a close game, probably a pretty high scoring game. But I like Auburn to take that one. Then they host Louisiana Tech, and I know Louisiana Tech was a pretty decent team a couple years ago. I don't know about anymore, but I know they used to struggle on defense. If that's the case now, then Auburn will really have their way with them. And, definitely like Auburn there. And then LSU comes to Jordan-Hare, and the only team that beat Auburn in the regular season last year is the LSU Tigers in this rivalry game. Uh, I'll definitely like Auburn in this game to get revenge at home uh, against a young, inexperienced LSU team who doesn't know who their quarterback's going to be, and it's replacing a lot of talent that they've lost on offense that they lost to the NFL draft. So I see this young quarterback struggling in Jordan-Hare, and he'll be under pressure from this Auburn defensive line. And I don't think LSU's defense will have enough star power to stop Auburn on offense. So I like Auburn to pick up the win there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do it fairly easily, even though I know it's always a really close game. But I like Auburn there quite a bit. Then a tricky game for Auburn as they go to Starkville to take on Mississippi State. Auburn and Mississippi State, always a really close game, as it was last year, as Nick Marshall connected with C.J. Uzomah for the game-winning touchdown. I think it'll be close again, but I think Auburn will pull it out again. They have a bye week before they take on South Carolina at home, and this is another interesting game. And Auburn draws South Carolina and Georgia. Of course, they always play Georgia, but those are the two teams they play out of the East, which are probably the two best teams. So a really tough draw, and Auburn has a way harder schedule than their counterparts in Alabama. So I think they would definitely want to trade schedules with Alabama right now. But yeah, South Carolina has only beaten Auburn one time in school history, and Steve Spurrier is 0-5 against Auburn since he's been at South Carolina. So South Carolina has struggled greatly against Auburn, and I think they continue to struggle in this one, and I think Auburn picks up the win there. Then Auburn goes to Ole Miss, which is another tricky game for basically the same reasons that Mississippi State was tricky. Ole Miss came into Auburn last year as the favorites, and were looking to really get their first SEC win, and Auburn really put it on them early, and Ole Miss kind of came back, but Auburn got the win, and I see it being the opposite this time. I see Ole Miss getting out to a good early start. I see Auburn coming back to win, and I don't think Ole Miss has some young talented players on defense. Their defense isn't bad, but I don't think they can. I don't think they'll be able to stop Auburn enough. This Auburn defense is just ferocious. I think, by the way, I think Auburn's offense is going to be the best offense in the country this year. I know that's a bold statement, but hell, they may have been the best offense last year, and I think they're going to be better this year just because their passing attack is going to be good. Uh, then they host Texas A&M. Texas A&M is really going to struggle this year, and I think A&M is going to get absolutely routed in this game. Their defense was awful last year. I don't see it being that much better this year. And man, that's a mismatch. Auburn's offense against A&M's defense. Man, they'll score as many points as they want to in this game. Put it that way. Uh, then Auburn goes to Georgia in a revenge game. Georgia's gonna want revenge over what happened in this game last year. And man, this is gonna be a really good game. But I think the difference is going to be Hudson Mason at quarterback versus Nick Marshall at quarterback. And Nick Marshall returning to Georgia will be the storyline here. But I like Nick Marshall better than Hudson Mason. I think the Auburn defensive line will be able to get pressure on him, and I think ultimately Auburn will pick up the win in a close one. And Auburn will play Samford, which will be a very easy win before they go to Alabama and finish up the season in the Iron Bowl. And this game, I think, is a toss-up. Really could see it going either way. But if you watch my Alabama preview video, I'm picking Alabama just because they're at home. That's the only reason. If it was in Jordan-Hare, I'd pick Auburn for sure. And I think Auburn is the better team this year. I think they're better than Alabama, and that's the first time in a while that you can say that. But I like Alabama to sneak this one out at home. It'll be an absolute barn burner, and like I said, it can go either way. And if that happens, that will put Auburn at 11-1, and I had Alabama at 12-0, so they'll have Alabama going to the SEC championship. But I think if Auburn does what I projected here, I don't think there's any question Auburn will be in that last four in that in the first ever college football playoff, and they'll go from there. And I'll probably make another video later at a later time. I'm gonna give my preseason top 10, and I'll probably predict who I think is going to be in the last four teams. And I think my prediction is that Alabama and Auburn will be there. So, hey, yeah, if you're Auburn, you'd hate to lose to Alabama, but you get in that last four, and you get a chance to finish what you couldn't finish last year. And Florida State might be there, so you get another shot at Florida State and another shot at beating Alabama if they beat you this year. So, man, it would suck to lose to Bama. I know no Auburn fan wants to do that, but man, you ultimately get where you want to be in that Final Four, and it'll be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what would happen from that point on. But I think that about does it for my 2014 Auburn Tiger preview. If you're an Auburn fan, I wish y'all luck this year. And as always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.